But here, Ibn Arabi says, God informs about the presence of the imagination and how to use it. First paragraph in Persian, for the commentator. Yani Haqq tanbih mikonad badin qawl bar hazrat khiyal. چه آنچه اول منکشف می شود مومن را حضرت خیال است و این مثال مقید است. بعد از آن مرتقی می گردد به مثال مطلق که آن عالم ارواح است. Okay. So what this means, he's saying, in other words, the Haqq informs about this statement of his concerning the presence of the imagination. Because the first thing that becomes unveiled for the true believer is the presence of the imagination, the domain of the imagination. And this is the restricted imagination, or the restricted forms of the imagination. After this, he or she ascends higher to the domain of the unrestricted imagination, or the unrestricted analog of forms. And this is the world of the spirits. So here we see what he's saying is the very first thing, if the seeker is trying and is doing zikr, it's no surprise that in meditation or zikr, everyone reports initially, whether they are Buddhists or Muslims, they're reporting feelings and sensation, but very often they're reporting experiences that we'd call visionary experiences. They are seeing flowers or gardens. They might see things that look dangerous. They might see demons. They might see other things. And Ibn Arabi here says this is the normal thing. And then at this point, if the person persists, they will rise up to a level of the imagination that is not limited in this way. They will rise up to the level that he's called the world of the spirits. Now, the world of spirits is a technical language which means that, think of the Platonic ideas, or in the Islamic tradition, it's called the ayon thabita, the fixed essences. And there's a transition between the essences and their manifestation in the world, and that is what they would appear to be in the world of spirits. What is the difference between the world of the essences and the world of the spirits? It's called life, that something has come to life somehow. So we could locate here possibly Rumi's domain at that level, meaning we can see that transition from there, because he was talking about how the imagination becomes more restricted, but then he was also talking about a world where there is in fact some definition, because when he says, Ay khuda jan ra tu bin ma on maqam kandaru be harf miru yad kalam, we have an image there, do we not? Oh God, show us that high station in which the worlds sprout, emerge without letters. There is a context given here. It is not a domain. It is Adam, meaning non-being, but we hear about this level of Adam in, for example, a Quranic verse where God is speaking to humanity before they come to the earth. What verse is that? Alas, that's correct. So again, the purpose of Sufism, much of it is to verify the statements in the Quran. Let's say you're a Muslim Sufi. In a general way, Sufism is to open the heart for anyone. But if you're a Muslim, like Al-Ghazali, for example, he's saying Sufism is the way that you will unlock the Quran. You will understand the Quran, what it means, okay? So in this case, we have this verse, and God says, Ashhadahum ala anfusihim. Alastu berabikum, right? Qalu bala shahidna, right? So God says, I caused them to witness, to testify. See, shahadat. Ashhadahum, meaning I made them testify. Ashhadahum ala anfusihim, about or against themselves, meaning concerning themselves. When I said, am I not your Lord? And they said, truly, we witness. Shahidna, we witness, this is so. So we have a domain there that is in this realm of what's called the world that's not yet come into this existence, which is called Aini, and that one is not yet Aini, is it? It's in a world of outside of time. It's outside of time. And so we immediately understand what he's saying is Rumi claims that you could go to that realm. Sufis everywhere they are saying you could return to that realm, meaning the objective of Sufism would be to return to the realm that you came from, which is Alast. Any questions so far? Now you see, you have a very good question, because even at this stage, if we hear about something, we have every right to consider ordinary psychology, which brings up the issues of wish fulfillment, wanting to feel eternal, wanting to feel important, or any number of these things. But imagine with me for a moment that you originate in a three-dimensional world. It has a vastness to it. It's called basit. At the same time that it is vast, it is also simple. So it has a paradoxical quality, very much like the ocean has compared to the waves. It's vaster than the waves because it's all miles underwater, and the waves, however, are the reality at the top, okay? But let's imagine in a geometric sense that the claim is that there's a book that says there's a three-dimensional world. And I am, the moment I've entered into this domain, it has collapsed into a two-dimensional world. Now, believe me, the Sufi is not working in the same experiential category. That's the difference. See, the difference is it's not true that they're in the same experiential category of I can remember this or think of this and it will become. What actually happens is the restoration of three-dimensionality, which is such a shock, and it is such a strong experience, and it is so completely unlike two-dimensionality, even though it is entirely dependent upon two-dimensionality. Agreed? So imagine that there is a two-dimensional world, and you're asking a question, but it assumes that the argument is remaining in a two-dimensional world. But what if the secret was not about a two-dimensional world? What is it? What if instead it's about suddenly having the shock of re-entering a three-dimensional world? You follow me? So let's say this. There may be some people who wish they had that experience, and they are capable in a two-dimensional world of creating the atmosphere or the belief that they have entered a three-dimensional world. But there's a very, very big difference between actually entering a three-dimensional world. It is not in the same category of existence. What does that feel like? I've explained one of the things is the center of one's awareness moves here. Where is that talked about, the idea of awareness coming from here? In Quran. Sadr. See, read Quran carefully and forget for a minute it's a religion. Think that it's a technical document. It's a description. And so you have people, they could be Native American people. What do the Native American people say? They say, we know the Great Spirit. See, so it's not just Muslims, but I'm focusing on a Muslim conversation right now. But you have a valid point, and more often than not, what happens in Sufism is imitation. We have a lot of very boring repetition of people writing Sufi poetry who have yet to have Sufi experience, but we also have real Sufis who have written poetry, like Rumi, for example. So this morning I was again quoting, Spirit is John, huh? Yeah. جان شناسان از عددها فارغند غرقه دریای بچونند و چند جان شو و از راه جان جان را شناس یار بینش شو نه فرزند قیاس. So here's another quick formula from Rumi. The people who know spirit have become freed from multiplicity. So here's another familiar comparison, a world of multiplicity versus a world of unity. Agreed? And so spirit, as I was saying to you, it's basit. It's basit, you understand, means simple and it means vast. So the thing about unity, it is vast, but it is the most simple thing of all. It's the most ubiquitous. You understand ubiquitous is everywhere. So next line, he says, John shall become spirit. You're saying, can I? Or shall I just hallucinate that I became spirit? How will I know? Rumi says, become spirit and go learn by the way of spirit what spirit is. Jan shah wa az rah jan, az tariq. Jan shah wa az rah jan, jan ra shanas. You can know spirit, but only if you become spirit and you go by its manner. Because if you go by this other manner you were talking about, I agree with you completely. There's 90% of the people there in this category. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. There's a lot of hypothesis, a lot of philosophy, a lot of people wish fulfillment and so forth. This is not the same thing. This is a categorically different thing. So you would know for sure. You would know when you have. No one will need to tell you that you've had the experience because it is so shocking. It's so categorically different from the kind of experience that you were describing. You see, and then he says, "Yare bi nesho." He says, be the friend of what's called the ainul yaqin, of seeing. Be the friend of seeing. Do not be the child of supposition, because a child of supposition is trying to outsmart the Quran or trying to outsmart the words of the Sufis, huh? And that person, yes, but there are many genuine. There's hundreds of thousands of Sufis any time in the world. This is the doctrine of the Sufis. Some of them, they have never heard of Sufism. Some of them, they are so innocent, they don't even know they're Sufi. They're so pure. See? They don't even know. They're like a farmer in the field, they're something like that, you see? Some of them, they have a job, they know, you see it's organized according to the possibilities. But what we're saying here, we're trying to understand his doctrine of the imagination, and there was a ladder, don't forget, that Rumi gave us in that poem that came all the way down to this level. I haven't quoted the whole verse, but I brought us from this level that we could call alast, because in alast, it's the first time that we find out there's a discussion or a conversation between God and humanity outside of time. Isn't most of the Quran inside of time? Wars, events, becoming refugees, convincing other people, moving to Ethiopia, etc. Isn't it mostly in time? But there are places in the Quran that are happening in the imaginal world, like when Moses sees the burning bush. And what he's saying here is there are also times when you can transcend the imaginal world and you can know what he's calling misal mutlaq. Now, itlaq has a specific meaning here. It means absolute in the sense of free. It means unlimited. You see? So it means there's either the limited imagination, which is limited by my own, kind of like what you're saying. I could hallucinate, I could have visions, and I should be careful at that point. I shouldn't reject them, but I should understand that they are metaphorical at best. It's not the right time to write a book on spirituality yet. See, it's better to wait and see what happens next. And to be patient. In Zen Buddhism, they're more strict. They say, you forget all about that. They call it makyo. They say, forget it. Don't even tell us about it. You have vision. We don't even want to know your vision. We want to know when you have no visions. See? So they have this approach, because they're cultivating itlaq. So itlaq is this path of kind of freedom, of liberation, of becoming birang. See? So birangi is this same thing we're talking about here, okay? So here he's taken us into these domains, and so I'm trying to ask myself just how free of context is Rumi's first statement. Ay Khuda Jan Ra, Rumi speaking to God. So the first context is he's speaking to God. Ay Khuda Jan Ra tu bin ma an maqam kandaru bi harf miru yad kalam. Well, actually, there is an image there, and there is a context, and it appears that he's asking God for something he already knows about, or he's trying to, very often with munajat, the speaker is trying to show you what you should ask God for. You follow me? So his prayer is actually his way of teaching you how to pray to God. So he's giving you a model. Ay Khuda Jan Ra tu bin ma an maqam kandaru behaf miru yad kala. So you're aware that you're asking God, show me the station that's not limited like the words fixed in Quran exactly, that has more meaning, broader meaning, a more primal, pure meaning than the outward meaning of those words, for example. Or it's a revelation as it continuously emerges as the ayats of the universe, because God has said that these are ayats in the universe also. Therefore, the Quran is also the universe. Huh? So, is that good? Yeah. Anybody else? و همچنین تنبیه می‌کند بر وصول بدین مقام با عبارت و استعمال ها، یعنی استعمال حضرت خیاله، و آن قوتی هست که در وی ظاهر می شود صور خیالیه، و استعمال او میسر نمی شود مگر با تجرد تمام و توجه کلی قلبی به سوی عالم علوی چه عقل هرگاه که متحرک می شود منفتح می گردد او را طریق فکر و منصد می گردد بر وی باب کشف، بلکه سایه را توجه تام می باید بعد از تسکین مفخره با ذکر از حرکاتش. So he's comparing faculties, and one faculty that everyone is using is called mufakkira. See? So this is the idrak, this is the mind, the thinking, this is aql. And he's saying here, literally at this sentence, he says, and also God is informing us about attaining this station, meaning the station of using the khiyal. And the Sheikh here is informing us where he says istimalaha, in the usage of. In other words, the usage of the presence of the imagination. And that usage is a faculty, a perceptive faculty, in which the forms of the imagination manifest in it, in that faculty. And the true usage of it, meaning by which it means taking it to the level of the divine imagination, does not become possible unless except through complete detachment, tajarrud tamam, and full attention, tawajjuh kuli, in the direction of the sublime world, olam ulvi. Okay? So he's saying this is very interesting because he's saying, kind of trying to avoid. So Mahmoud John, he's asking a good question, what is the condition, or aren't people fooling themselves? And he's saying the first thing you would have to do to use the imagination is you would have to become completely empty of these kinds of, he's saying completely empty and completely focused, right? And then he says a very interesting thing, because he says because the intellect, so here the intellect is also not your friend. He says because the intellect, any time that it becomes activated, this opens the doors, so to speak, of the process of thinking, and this becomes a barrier for him of the gate of revelation or inspiration. Him or her, becomes a barrier. And he says, actually, the traveler, the spiritual traveler, for the spiritual traveler, there has to be complete focus after there has been a settling down and quieting of the faculty of thought, which is achieved through zikr, which then puts this person in the situation where they could use the faculty of the imagination. Okay? Any question about this point that he's making? It's clear? Did we get it, what he's saying? It's very much like zikr, actually. See, the thing I noticed right away is it seems to be the same usual conditions, that there's a settling down and an emptying. Isn't this the same as حافظ خانه خالی کن دلا تا منزل جانان شود که این حواسناکان دل و جان جای لشکر میکنند. Isn't it the same as this? So meaning I should say in English, empty the house, O dear one, dear friend. So that it becomes the mansion of the beloved. Because these desirous ones, desiring fame, desiring security, whatever it might be, desiring power, whatever it might be, these desires have turned the heart and the spirit into an army camp. See, the heart and the soul, they have turned it into an army camp, which means a lot of noise, a lot of activity. So is it not the same as that? I think so. So the same advice that we get, he's saying, and this is, I must tell you that my own experience was that when I first started to do meditation more seriously, or zikr more seriously, I had innumerable visions and so on, and most of those are about the self, and over time they become less and less, thank goodness. So one has less and less of these kinds of visions. So it may be that one just has to burn through them. Even the things like you talked about, where a person is initially, it doesn't mean they're not a seeker just because when they were first seeking they didn't get it right. It just means that maybe they had to start over again. In my case, I noticed, for example, that I've told you before, if we look at Lahiji's great famous book, Mafati Ali Jaz fi Shari Gulshan Raz, every single instance of fana is preceded by an imaginal experience. Every time. You can read yourself, you can see. But what does that mean? Let me give you an example. For me, I might be doing zikr and I see a shining ocean and everything seems beautiful, and all of a sudden a whale jumps up out of the ocean in front of me and surprises me so much that I am like annihilated. See, that's an example that I can remember. So it's in the imaginal domain. It's true I've sailed a lot in the ocean, so I have this as a background memory of like a resource, you could say, of memories. But I don't have that particular memory, see? In this case, we're talking there's an ocean, and in my meditation, which is absolutely beautiful and focused, but I'm still there. My nafs is still there. And all of a sudden something dramatic happens, which is the appearance of this whale, and it causes me to lose a sense. It causes ecstasy. It causes me to get outside of myself. Now, after many years, so if you do zikr or meditation for many years, what happens is your visions, they change and they become more mutlaq. They become more absolute.